The American Secretary of State, John Kerry, has held talks with the president of South Korea in Seoul amid deepening international concern about North Korean threats. After the meeting, Mr. Kerry made clear the US would never accept North Korea as a nuclear power and would come to the defence of the South if necessary.
I want to reiterate perhaps the most important thing with respect to the immediate tensions that exist here in this region. Neither the United States nor the Republic of Korea nor the international community, we are all united in the fact that North Korea will not be accepted as a nuclear power. The rhetoric that we're hearing from North Korea is simply unacceptable by any standard. And I am here to make it clear today on behalf of President Obama and the citizens of the United States and our bilateral security agreement that the United States will, if needed, defend our allies and defend ourselves.
Meanwhile, leaked US intelligence suggests that North Korea is now capable of mounting nuclear warheads on missiles. The Pentagon is downplaying the report, but if true, it would represent a grave heightening of the threat from Pyongyang. After meeting the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, President Obama urged the regime in Pyongyang to end what he called its belligerent approach.
We both agree that now's the time for North Korea to end the kind of belligerent approach that they've been taking and to try to lower temperatures. Nobody wants to see a conflict on the Korean Peninsula. But it's important for North Korea, like every other country in the world, to observe the basic rules and norms that are set forth, including a wide variety of UN resolutions that have passed. And we will continue to try to work to resolve some of those issues diplomatically, even as I indicated to the Secretary General that the United States will take all necessary steps to protect its people and to meet our obligations under our alliances in the region.
Well, that's obviously the political position. Let's speak now to Dr. Robert Kelly, Professor of International Relations at Busan National University in South Korea, and joining us from there by Skype. Professor Kelly, are the North Koreans in any way likely to listen to either President Obama or his Secretary of State?
No, almost certainly not. The North Koreans already know this stuff. They already know that the Americans will respond. That's why the North Koreans won't actually provoke a war, by the way. But no, much of this, I think, is being driven by internal politics. This is probably about regime jockeying between different factions under the new Kim and the new order. So what we say on the outside doesn't really mean very much beyond what they already know, which is that if they provoke a war, the regime will be eliminated. So this doesn't change much.
So if we take a closer look then at those factions in Pyongyang, we've heard a lot of people saying, let's get the Chinese to put pressure on and exert some leverage here. Does Beijing have leverage, and over which factions, if so?
I do think the Chinese have leverage. I just don't think they're using it very much. China likes a divided Korea. North Korea is, the Chinese will openly tell you this in conferences and such, North Korea is a buffer between China and the democratic South Korea, Japan, and the United States. An absorption of North Korea by South Korea could conceivably put American soldiers on the Chinese border. The Chinese do not want that. My guess is on this current crisis, the Chinese are very ambivalent. On the one hand, they want to retain the buffer of North Korea. On the other hand, they probably are becoming very worried by the sort of erratic, unpredictable behavior of the North, particularly threatening to strike the United States with nuclear weapons. That would pull China in, right? So if my guess is, to your question about the factions, my guess is the Chinese are probably talking to the army, specifically the Korean People's Army. And my own sense is that it's the KPA, the Korean People's Army, that's behind this.
And what then about the overnight reports from one congressman in Washington, D.C., suggesting that the North Koreans have already achieved the miniaturization of a nuclear warhead to put it on one of these functioning missiles? I mean, how concerned does the region, including the Chinese, need to be about that?
Oh, that's a pretty big step. I mean, that's why I think it's getting so much attention. I believe it led your broadcast. If the Defense Intelligence Agency really does stand beside that, it does suggest that the North Koreans have made the next step beyond actually detonating a weapon to actually making it small enough, which is actually a pretty big step. If you remember, the Americans' first bombs in 1945 were very large. The next big issue for the North Koreans is targeting. Can they actually guide the missile to where it's supposed to go? That will be the next big step. We'll have to wait on that. And it is a genuine threat. I mean, there's no doubt, right? I mean, if you look at particularly the Japanese, for example, have responded very seriously to this, more seriously than South Koreans. The Japanese would put Patriot missiles out. There was an accidental tweet by the city of Yokohama a few days ago saying the North Koreans had launched a missile, and there was panic. I mean, this is pretty serious. So, yeah, definitely.
Dr. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us from South Korea.
Sure. Thank you for having me.